no role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, we're going to be doing part 2 of 5 in our series that we started last week based on the article from Ken Gosnell that we found in the Forbes leadership section called 5 Commitments Leaders Can Make in Difficult Times. Last week, we spoke about the idea of committing to learning from every person and every experience. All of these weeks are going to be based on a commitment, making a commitment to do something. And you spoke last week about the importance of that verbiage and how it's things that we can do within ourselves that can help us get through these items. This week, we're going to be talking about number 2, which is committing to finding and fighting for your passion. And this is an interesting one because I think there are a lot of people who, in difficult times, their passions go onto the back burner. It's almost like a Maslowian hierarchy of needs that you when you're budgeting for things, the trip to Disneyland takes a back seat when you have a hard time buying food. Sometimes when it comes to work and leadership, thinking that you can find and fight for your passion, you might feel like that hierarchically, that's not a right thing to do. You shouldn't be prioritizing that over whatever the business is of getting the business done. But in actuality, it might be exactly the opposite of that. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think, passion in professional work. You hear the term a lot, and you hear a lot of people talk about it and kind of what they think and follow your passion, follow your heart. And then you listen to like a lot of influencers now, and they'll be like, you get one life to live, quit your day job and put it all into your passion. And like, look, I'm a creative person, and I totally get that. There are things that I extremely enjoy. I get lost in my work. I love to create. It doesn't feel like work. And I think that's that element of passion. Like there's the passion of, if I had the ability to do anything in the world and not have to worry about making money at it or making enough money at it that it could pay all my bills, I think that's the passion thing that most people think about. In this context, I think it's important to call out that when you have a job, a role, when you're doing the work, especially in leadership, like once you've raised your hand to say, I want to lead people, I want to be responsible and accountable for the development of my people, then I would imagine some part of that is a passion for you. Whether it's the training part, the development part, the people piece, the watching people grow and succeed, whatever that is, there's something within the framework of you being a leader listening to this podcast right now, or you aspiring to be a leader listening to the podcast right now. Part of that work, there is something in there that you are passionate about. So I think that I totally, that's initially where my head goes. Like, we're not talking about the passion of, I like to, rate and discuss and debate hip-hop greatest albums like I like to do. We are talking about at work, my job in leadership. I have a passion for helping people to consider their own development and talk about that they can achieve and exceed their own expectations if they apply themselves. So within that piece, I think that to me is the most important part of this, is find the passion within the responsibility that you have as a leader. What part of leadership are you most passionate about? And then are you spending time doing that as much as you possibly can?
Yeah, I think the idea of prioritization comes into play here too, though, because if you think about some of the greatest discoveries or some of the biggest kind of advancements or inventions or these kind of like watershed moments for humanity, they only came because there was a really pressing problem that had to be solved. There's an old saying that necessity is the mother of innovation, and that if there is no problem to solve, it's really hard to come up with something. It's really hard to invent something new. You have to have problems to solve in order to come up with something to solve for that problem. And I think that's why the context of having this in the, what leaders can do in difficult times, the fact that you're talking about in difficult times here, I think that kind of unlocks a part of our brain to work on these things that in normal times, in non-difficult times, wouldn't necessarily be unlocked. And so to give an example of that, you said, if you have a passion for leadership and you have a passion for helping people grow and develop, well, when times are difficult, meaning when maybe job security isn't what it should be, maybe when bonuses aren't being given out like they should be or like they normally are, maybe when raises aren't happening, when people are worried about how they're going to, pay the bills or solve their own problems in their personal life, sometimes what happens is work takes a back seat to that. And then productivity drops, engagement drops. If you're a leader and you're passionate about developing people and engaging people and doing your best to help others, doing that for people who are experiencing those things in their own lives will make it much less likely that work will take a back seat for them. It'll make it much more likely that they will find ways of engaging in their work because you have done that as a leader. They'll find more ways of bringing their best selves to work and being productive and doing the job that they would do normally in good times, but maybe they're having a harder time doing right now because they have so much on their mind. And so this idea of just, what is different about it being a difficult time versus not, I think the human brain, that's the way we work, that in difficult times, we sometimes have more abilities to get things done than not. The last example I'll give on that is that, I know that when I have, let's say I have, 3 or 4 days off in a row where I don't have a lot of work to do and there's like a honey-do list around the house of stuff to get done, I'll find myself on the 4th day still having it all to do and feeling like, oh my gosh, where did the 4 days go? But if I know that I only have like 2 hours a day for 3 days in a row to get stuff done, it all manages to get done. It's this idea of that everything is so pressing and all these things have to fit together like pieces of a puzzle that it changes the way I process the information. And I think I can't procrastinate. I can't go deviate from the course. I have to really focus on getting it done or it won't get done. And it's amazing when I am able to get done when I have less time.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's interesting because I think when it feels like there's an urgency or a deadline or an expectation or like to your point, like, hey, this is what's going on, this needs to get done by this time, then really it takes all your attention and it takes a lot of your focus and effort to make something happen. And you don't either convince yourself or you don't allow yourself to get distracted or to pull off of whatever that main objective is. And I think that you're right. Like in difficult times and in this context of like leaders and passion and that type of thing, I think that that's why it is a commitment that you have to do, is that it's accepting where we're at currently, accepting that there are a lot of new dynamics to leadership and new expectations of leadership. And if we think of it as such, if we think of it as, this is something that we really have to figure out now, not just for the now, but for the future, for the short term, for the long term future of leadership. How much better are we getting at thinking about what are the passionate parts of the job that we have, and how can we make sure that we're doing those things again more often or with our people? Because it's going to be where it can feel like I'll get to that eventually. I hear that term sometimes and it drives me crazy. Like whenever I hear the idea of back to the basics in the same context of leading or developing people, I just want to just burn it all down, right? Because I'm just like, what do you mean? Let's get back to developing or caring for or like teaching our people.
Were you not?
Yeah, exactly. Have you not been doing that for the last 6 months, year, right?
Yeah.
Like that's and again, maybe it's just because people don't think about the words that they say, but it drives me crazy because I'm just like, either you're a leader or you're not. And if you're a leader, those things are never negotiable, right? We're going to have times when, to your point, we may have to prioritize something like, hey, we've got to get this task done, or we have this project coming up. And like, while I would like for you and I to sit down for 2 hours to talk about your development, in specificity, we can't do that right now because of this thing, but it's only because of this thing right now. And we'll still get some time, but maybe it won't be the full 2 hours, or maybe we'll have to break it up over the course of a couple of weeks. But like, we never go away from that. Like, it's never like, oh man, we were just, Chris, I'm sorry. I know we've just been busy the last couple of years. There's been a lot going on, and we had to hire some people, and people were working from home. And I really wish that we just had a minute where I could help you be better today than you were 2 years ago. But clearly, like we've been busy, and there have been other things out there. And like that sounds ridiculous because it is ridiculous. So I think that like in this article and this point of committing to this as leaders, like that's really what I read from it is. If you say leadership is your passion, then you're really going to have to spend some more time in that space committing to what are those things that you can leverage right now to help you pull through so that you can get better at the new expectations of leadership as all of this unfolds.
Right. So, there are a couple of types of leaders out there, right? So there's the type of leader who has a passion for developing people, and they do it well during non-difficult times, right? Things are going well, and they feel like, oh, wow, I have plenty of time to focus on my people to help them develop, and they do that well. And over a period of time when things are going well like that, you might have some other leaders who that kind of trails off a little bit because they look at leadership as a reactive process, not as a proactive process. And so leadership is needed only when there's a problem to be solved, not as a method of preventing problems from happening to begin with. And if you're that type of leader, then it might be very easy to not keep exercising or flexing that muscle of developing your people and helping them get better and really putting them at the front of all your decisions. If you don't do that every single day, you will forget how to do it. It's not like you can't focus on it again. It's just that it won't be the knee jerk. It won't be kind of like the go-to. And then when times get difficult, it is not anywhere near the front of your mind. Now, the reaction for how do we solve these difficult times becomes very transactional. I remember being a line level salesperson in a retail store when I was in my teens, and there was a kind of like this all hands-on push to like drive for sales or revenue because we were falling short before the end of the month. And the way the leadership team at the time took that upon themselves to kind of fix the problem was to hammer down on every single person that was there. What are you selling? What are you selling? What are you selling? Instead of taking the time to take a step back and say, the better way to get this team of people to coalesce around a common objective is to make them feel like they're part of the objective together, to focus on developing them and to figure out what they need from you, and then trusting that they will execute and get the job done. But instead, they took the approach of like, let's figure out how to get this done from a very transactional standpoint. And what do you know? The people didn't respond to that. They just kind of did what they were doing, and they said yes sir and cheerleaded on in the whatever the connection meetings were. But then then went back to their business, and it was business as usual. No one did anything differently, and we didn't hit the goals that we were looking to hit. That's what happens when a leader is not used to doing this. When it comes to developing people, is they think that is the go-to when it comes to a problem to be solved. Difficult times happen. We need to do a really, really easy 1 + 1 = 2. You're short on revenue, push people on revenue, right? Whatever it is that you're short on, whatever it is that you need to fix in the organization, push people on that thing and they'll get it done. And what you don't realize, what a lot of leaders don't realize, is that is the worst way to get it done. But if your go-to is developing people and getting people to do what you need them to do by focusing on them, by understanding that you can't force anybody to do anything. All you can get them to do is whatever it takes to have them not get fired. And if you want them to go above and beyond to really pick up the pace of whatever that thing is for you as the leader, they have to believe they're doing it for you, not for the organization. They have to buy into you as a leader, as the person who is going to open doors for them and get them where they want to go. And therefore they will say, I feel like I have to do this for my leader because they're asking this of me, and I know they do so much for me, so I'm going to kind of give back, and I want to step up when I'm being asked to step up. That's a very different process, but it's one that a lot of leaders don't understand unless they do it already before the times are tough.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it too is we talk a lot about perseverance and grit, and I may have said this on the podcast before. I say it a lot. I just don't know if I said it on the podcast, but we talk a lot about perseverance and grit. We know what it is. We've talked about the videos, the concepts, everything. What we don't talk about is how much it sucks to be in the middle of it. Right. Like when you're going through something where you must persevere, like that typically is not an easy thing, right? When you have to show grit, it's because you are really grinding and you are pushing yourself through something and you're dragging yourself through something, and like that is not fun times, right? Like and so I think of that same thing when I think about passion, is that are you passionate enough to speak up as a leader? Are you passionate enough to persevere and to grind through something when you know it's the right thing to do for your people, when you know it's the right thing to do for, the culture and the business that you're looking to kind of create or cultivate or grow. But like that's also a really, really big part of passion, is just knowing so much that this is what you know is the right thing, that you have to speak up and that you have to share your perspectives and ideas. And that element of passion sometimes is the energy that's needed to shake other people out of just the comforts of complacency and of just like average elements of things. Like, you need that passion. So I think that's another thing, that when times are tough, sometimes you will spend more time defending and protecting the things that you know are deepest to the core values that you hold, your organization holds, or that your team holds. And that's a big part of passion as well. Like the example that you gave, if you've got leaders that are just like, oh man, we're getting pressure. And so if we're getting pressure, we then basically just open up the pressure valve and let all of our people absorb this pressure. Then that's exactly the response that you get. Like, people aren't used to that. They don't like that. They're not motivated by it. They're not, intrigued or curious about figuring it out. When you have an environment where you teach people about pressure and you help them understand how pressure can get high and low and how do you navigate those types of things, and you get to go to them and say, we're about to have a high pressure moment and we need your help in all the things that we've worked on to get here, then people are a lot more apt to want to do that work with you. But I think that's another part of this from a passion standpoint that leaders, I think, are responsible for, is let me see your passion when times get tough and when people start to either challenge or twist or bend some of the value structure or how you help people or how you take care of people. That's when I want to hear some passion as well.
Right. I think the last part about this that I think is important is this: that when times are difficult, finding and fighting for your passion can make those times, I don't want to say less difficult, but at least you'll believe that whatever you're going through the difficult time for is worth it. I think back to probably 15 years ago now, the D5 conference when Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were on stage at the same time. And there's a quote that Steve Jobs said a long time ago about how you have to be passionate about something to go do it. Otherwise, any sane person would just quit. Like when it can be, because it will be difficult. And when it becomes difficult, if you don't love it, if you're not passionate about it, you should quit, because why would you not, right? You have to be passionate about it. Otherwise, you won't be able to kind of persevere through those difficult times. They will eat you, as opposed to you being able to get through the other side. Because what you said about grit is spot on. No one likes needing it. Like it's frustrating to go through it. But what feels really, really good is the feeling on the other side, when you've gotten through it and you look back and it was something that you were passionate about, something that you were fighting for, that you thought was the right thing to do, and it was difficult, but you succeeded. Whatever that thing was, there's no way to get that feeling unless the need for the grit and the difficult time comes first.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
The 1 Minute Hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get your pen and paper. I want you to write down the things that you're passionate about in your current job, the reasons why you decided to go for your current role. And hopefully there is something. Hopefully there's something there. Even if this is a stepping stone for something else. There's a reason you're doing the job you're doing right now, as opposed to another job, right? If it was the same money, another job, you'd be doing that. So why are you doing this job right now? Write those reasons down, and I want you to keep them with you, because inevitably times are going to get difficult. It might not necessarily be like a years-long recession. It could just be that you have a month where it's a lot busier than it normally is, and you're having to kind of prioritize things. I want you to have that with you so that you can reference back to it and think about why is it that you got into this job in the first place, and make sure that you are filling your day with work towards that thing, whatever it is. So no matter what happens with regard to the fire of the moment that has to be put out, or the campaign of the day, or the struggle of the month, or a years-long recession, whatever it is, that you look back on that and you think about why it is you're doing this job and you're putting effort into it, because that will get you through those difficult times, whether they are only days or weeks or years.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack. And sometimes we have those that we work with in our lives that kind of help to either pull us or push us when we need to get through some of those difficult moments. And then I think over time we start to realize that sometimes it has to be ourselves, and we have to figure that out. And I think that one of the ways that has been successful with me in the past is thinking about exactly that. Am I doing the work that I would be proud of? Am I making sure that I maintain my values, whether or not my business is good or maybe we're struggling? And am I making sure that I'm not allowing there to be any type of twisting, turning, or cutting down of the core values that I hold as a leader, and the experience that I want my people to have. And like, you're going to have sometimes difficult conversations. You're going to have to implement strategies that, maybe you don't fully agree with, or that need to happen for the survival of the business. Like, those things are going to happen. But if they're done in a way that are aligned with your values, and if you are making sure that you are clear about what it is that you are passionate about in the work that you do, then you can lean into that quite a bit, and that can be very helpful to get through the tougher times. And then when you get to the other side, I think for me, it cements those values as things that really are important and need to be protected and cultivated and sustained.
Right. I think another really important part of this too is that people who believe what they are saying are magnetic. It's easy to gravitate towards people like that. And what I mean by that is that if you are a leader and you are working towards the things that you are passionate about, your people will naturally be more likely to gravitate towards you, as opposed to if you are a person who just seems like they're going through the motions to get the job done. If you're doing the part that you are responsible for because that's your job, they might do it too, but they're not going to give you the credibility that you would get if they saw that the work that you're doing around leadership is something you are absolutely passionate about. You think about politicians. I'm sure there are politicians out there who you agree with what they're saying, but in the back of their head that they don't necessarily believe what they're saying. They're just trying to get reelected or whatever it is, and you align on it, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily care. And then there are people who you might completely disagree with, but they believe every word that's coming out of their own mouth. And so while you might never agree with them, there's something about the passion around it where they're not lying to you. They're not lying to you. There's something magnetic about people who do it that way. And I think if you're a leader and you are leading your people that way, you will be more likely to get them to come along for the ride, even if there are times when the two of you don't align.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.